guys, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to ASMR. ASMR showcases spine-chilling stories from Reddit. All will be narrated in a soothing ASMR whisper. So let's find a quiet spot, relax, and dive into the world of whispers and chills with these scary stories from Reddit. This happened to me back in 2018, and I still don't know how to explain it. I was living alone in a house I'd just bought. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere, but it was on a quiet street. Only 4 houses, all spread out with a lot of trees between them. It was the first place I'd ever owned, and I was proud of it. Built in the 70s, needed work, but I was slowly fixing it up, and I liked the quiet, until this thing started. It was a Wednesday night, around 1 AM, when I first heard it. Knocking. Not on the front door, not on the walls, on the sliding glass door at the back of the house. I was in bed, lights out, and the sound was clear. That heavy, dull thump of knuckles on glass. 3 of them, evenly spaced. I froze. I live alone. My property is fenced. The backyard is surrounded by tall hedges, and there's only one gate that stays locked from the inside. No one should have been back there. I got out of bed and stood in the hallway listening. Nothing. No voices. No footsteps. No second round of knocks. I didn't look. I don't know why. Something about the way the knocks sounded. It didn't feel like someone asking for help or trying to get my attention. It felt like they were waiting to see if I'd respond. The next morning, I checked the back door. No smudges, no prints, nothing on the ground. I chalked it up to a weird dream, or maybe a branch hitting the glass. The next night, I stayed up a little later. I left the light on in the kitchen near the sliding door. Around 12:45, I was in bed, scrolling my phone when it happened again. Knocking. Same rhythm, same spot, not loud, but firm enough that I knew it wasn't wind or an animal. This time I got up. I walked through the kitchen and stopped just before the sliding door. I didn't turn on the porch light. The curtain was drawn, but it's one of those thin white ones that glows a little when a light gets behind it. And I swear to God, I saw a silhouette on the other side. Not a full body, just a hint of one, like someone was standing very close to the glass, not moving, not swaying. I didn't lift the curtain. I stood there for a minute, heart pounding, and then quietly backed away. No more knocks. The next day, I checked again. Still no signs, no footprints, no scuff marks on the glass. But the gate to the backyard, which I always keep locked, was slightly open. Not all the way, just a few inches. The latch wasn't broken. It was like someone had unlocked it and not bothered to close it properly. That night, I brought a kitchen chair into my bedroom and wedged it under the doorknob. I didn't sleep much, and like clockwork, 1:02 AM, the knocking started. I sat up in bed, holding my breath. Didn't move, didn't make a sound. The knocks didn't come again. That was the last time it happened. No knocks on the 4th night, or the 5th, just silence. A week later, I was outside, trimming back the hedge near the gate, when I found something tucked behind one of the thicker branches. It was a rolled-up sock, one of mine. Not a pair, just a single, worn-out sock. I was pretty sure had gone missing in the laundry weeks earlier. It had been tied in a knot. Now, maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it blew out there somehow, but it was clean. No dirt, no water damage from the sprinklers. It looked like someone had placed it there, deliberately. I changed the locks that weekend, put motion lights around the entire back of the house, installed cameras too, though they never picked up anything after that. I never heard the knocks again. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was someone messing with me, or something worse, but I've never had an experience like it before or since, and I still keep a chair under my bedroom doorknob at night. just in case. I work night shifts for a small power company. We monitor residential grids, mostly rural, make sure everything's running smooth, handle outages, that kind of thing. It's not exciting, but it's quiet, and I like quiet. Most nights, I sit in the control room watching monitors. Each house on our network is represented by a little green dot. When something trips or goes out, it blinks red. But a couple of months back, I noticed something strange. There was this one dot, way out on the edge of the forested area, house 487. Tiny old structure, according to the database, used maybe 200 watts a month. But for the last 7 days, the light had stayed on, constant. That wouldn't be weird, except that place hasn't been lived in for years. I looked into it. The owner died in 2006. No known relatives. Property was never resold. No one had submitted a change of service. But every night for a week, the lights would turn on around 9:13 p.m. exactly. Not 9:12, not 9:14, and they'd stay on until sunrise. I filed a report with my supervisor. He shrugged it off. Could be squatters, could be a timer someone left behind, not our concern. But something about it gnawed at me, especially after I started noticing the camera feeds. We're not supposed to tap into private cameras, obviously, but sometimes when houses are connected to smart grids, fragments get picked up. House 487 had no smart tech, but somehow, every night at 9:13, a static-filled video window would open in the corner of my main screen, just for a second. At first, it was too glitchy to see anything. Flickers of a hallway, dark shapes, like something was pacing back and forth near the camera. Then, it started getting clearer. I saw a figure, tall, slumped posture, head twisted too far to one side, pacing in a narrow hallway with peeling wallpaper. Each night, it got closer to the camera. I tried screen capturing the feed, but it never saved, just left a blank image file with the name 487 Watch. And then, it started showing up earlier. 8:50, then 8:22, then 7:41. And the image was crystal clear now. No glitches, no static. And that figure, it had stopped pacing. It was just staring at the camera. I couldn't sleep, started dreading work. Even when I wasn't on shift, I checked the monitor remotely. House 487, green dot, always green, until last week. The light didn't come on at 9:13. I stared at the screen, waiting for the dot to turn green like it always did, but it stayed dark. For the first time in almost 2 months. I felt relieved until the video feed came through anyway. No static this time, full sound. I heard something breathing, deep, wet, hungry, and the camera wasn't in the hallway anymore. It was in my office. I shut down the system, ripped the power from the wall, but the monitor stayed on, just for a second longer, enough for the figure to turn its head and smile. They think I'm burned out, gave me a week off, but every night I check, and every night I see a faint green light glowing through my own window. 9:13 exactly, and sometimes I hear pacing just behind the walls. My friend Lucy rented a terraced house last year. 2 bedrooms, old brickwork, a narrow staircase that creaked when you so much as looked at it. It wasn't modern or fancy, but it was hers, and she was proud of it. I helped her move in, unpacked boxes, set up the router, and that's when she told me about the woman next door. She doesn't talk much, Lucy said, just stands in her upstairs window, watches things. I brushed it off. Lots of older folks keep to themselves. But after that, every time I came by, Lucy would mention her again. I think she sleeps during the day, she'd say. Or, she never turns her lights on. It's weird. One night, about a month after she moved in, Lucy called me, sounded shaken. I asked what was wrong. She said, I saw her on my landing. Now, Lucy doesn't scare either. She's practical, steady, not one for flights of fancy. So when she told me that at 2 a.m. she came out of the bathroom and saw a woman standing halfway up her stairs, arms limp at her sides, head slightly turned, I believed her. She said the woman didn't move, didn't blink, just stared with this hollow look, like she wasn't fully there. Lucy froze, then ran back into her room, slammed the door, and didn't come out until the morning. She called the landlord the next day, asked if anyone had ever died in the house. He said no, just that the old neighbour on the other side, the one who never talked, had passed away earlier that year. No family, no funeral. Lucy hadn't even known she was dead. After that, things got worse. She'd hear footsteps upstairs when she was alone. Lights would flicker in the hallway, just for a second, always around 1 a.m. And once, when she left her door open overnight, she swore she woke up to the sound of breathing right next to her bed. I offered to stay over, keep her company. The first night I slept on the sofa, nothing happened. But the second night, I woke up around 1:10, cold. The house felt off, still but not quiet, like everything was holding its breath. And then I heard it, a single step on the stairs, heavy, deliberate, just one. I sat up, then another, and another, until I could tell something was on the landing, not walking up or down, just shifting its weight like it was waiting. I got up, crept to the bottom of the stairs, and looked up, barely breathing. The hallway light was off, but there was just enough moonlight to see the outline of a figure, a woman, hair hanging limp, wearing something loose like an old nightdress. She wasn't facing me, she was facing Lucy's room. I whispered her name, Lucy, and the woman turned, but not like a normal person. Her body didn't move, just her head, too far, too fast. Her eyes were empty, her mouth hung open, like she was stuck mid-breath. Then she stepped toward me, not rushed, not slow, just coming. I ran, didn't even think, back into the living room, slammed the door and pressed my back to it. No footsteps followed, no knock, just silence. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up to daylight. Lucy was in the kitchen, pale and tired. She said, she came into my room last night. She stood at the end of the bed, didn't move, just looked at me until I pretended to sleep. Lucy moved out a week later. We never figured out who she was, not officially. But a neighbour down the street said the old woman who used to live next door lost her daughter in that house decades ago. She died on the stairs, fell while sleepwalking. Now the house is empty again, curtains drawn, overgrown lawn, windows covered from the inside. But every now and then, someone walks by and swears they see a woman standing halfway up the stairs, waiting, watching, still. There's an old windmill on the property behind mine. It's not operational, it hasn't spun in decades. Blades rusted, shaft cracked. Just sits there with that warped little shed beside it, halfway swallowed by weeds. I live alone in an old farmhouse about 20 minutes from the nearest gas station. It's peaceful and it's quiet, or at least it used to be. The first time I noticed him, I thought it was a shadow. Something slumped against the base of the windmill. I was out on the porch drinking coffee. The light was just starting to shift, one of those thick, golden evenings where everything looks softer than it really is. I squinted, and the shadow moved. It was a man, sitting cross-legged in the grass, arms resting on his knees, staring up at the blades. Didn't move, didn't turn, just stared. I watched him for over 10 minutes, trying to convince myself it was a hunter or maybe a squatter. Even called out to him, "Hey, you alright?" Nothing, didn't flinch. I walked inside to grab my binoculars, but when I came back, he was gone. I tried to write it off. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Maybe it was a trick of the light. But the next night, he was there again. Same position, same spot. Only this time, his head was tilted back, like he was trying to see the inside of the windmill. Like something was calling to him from the broken blades. And when I looked at him through the binoculars, I realised something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't blinking. Over the next few days, I saw him more frequently, sometimes at night, sometimes just before sunrise, always facing the windmill, always silent. I never saw him arrive, never saw him leave. He'd just be there, and then he wouldn't. I finally walked over, broad daylight, had a long piece of rebar in one hand and a flashlight in the other. By the time I reached the fence line, he was gone. But the grass where he sat, it was flattened, crushed in a perfect circle, like someone had been sitting there for ages. The shed beside the windmill had a chain around the door. I figured it was locked, but it wasn't. The chain was just wrapped around the handles, loose. Inside was dust, tools, old ropes, and a ladder leading down into the floor. Stone steps, descending into something much older than the building above. I only took a few steps before I felt the air change. It got wet, not humid, wet, like something had exhaled from deep underground, and it smelled like iron. I backed out and left the chain as I found it. That night, I woke up to a noise I can't describe. It was like a groaning of a metal gate, but slower, heavier. It was coming from the windmill. When I looked out the window, my stomach dropped. The blades were turning, barely, but moving, and standing beneath them, arms raised towards the sky, was the man, like he was welcoming something back. I grabbed my rifle and stormed out, yelling. But the moment my foot hit the grass, he vanished. Not walked, not ran, gone. The blades stopped turning, and the grass where he'd stood had split open. Just a few inches wide, but deep. I could see something wet and black moving beneath the earth, like it was breathing. I called the county office the next morning, asked who owned the property behind mine. They said it's been abandoned since 1972. No records, no caretaker. I asked if anyone had reported people trespassing. She paused, then asked, "You seeing someone near the windmill?" I said yes. She just whispered, "Don't look at him." Since then, I've boarded up my windows that face the field. I don't go outside at night, but I still hear the blades turning, even on windless nights, even when the air is still. And sometimes, just as I'm falling asleep, I hear footsteps on the porch, not fast, not urgent, just a man, pacing, watching the windmill turn. I used to work at a lodge in northern Montana, pretty isolated, up in the woods near Flathead. It was the kind of place people booked for off-the-grid retreats. No cell reception, no internet, just pine trees, mountains, and long, quiet nights. I was a groundskeeper during the off-season. Only 3 of us stayed on site through the winter. Me, the property manager, and a cook who came in twice a week to prep for the staff. It sounds peaceful, but winters was rough. Sub-zero temperatures, knee-deep snow, and nothing but forest for miles in every direction. And during one of those winters, I started noticing someone in the woods. The first time, it was just a glimpse. It was around 5:30 p.m, almost dark, and I was clearing snow off the steps leading down to the dock. Out of the corner of my eye, maybe 50 yards back among the trees, I saw someone watching me. They were half hidden behind a tall pine, just one shoulder, a sliver of a face, not moving, I thought maybe it was a guest who'd wandered too far, but we weren't open for the guests that week. The lodge was empty except for us. I took a few steps toward the tree, squinting into the dusk. Gone. No sound, no movement, just the wind pushing snow off branches. I told the property manager, Elise, that night. She brushed it off, said it was probably a day or my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever I'd seen wasn't lost. They were waiting. A few nights later, I was doing a routine check of the outbuildings. There's a small utility shed near the edge of the woods, about a quarter-mile from the main lodge. I had to snowshoe out to it. I unlocked the shed, checked the supplies. Everything was normal. But when I stepped back outside, I heard it, breathing, slow, heavy breathing, coming from behind the tree directly across from the shed. I stood there for a solid minute, not moving, barely breathing myself. The air was so still, I could hear the snow crunch under the weight of whatever was standing behind that tree. But nothing came out. Eventually, I backed away, turned, and walked back to the lodge. Didn't run, just moved steadily, one step at a time. Didn't want to turn my back too fast. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time the wind hit the window, I jolted up thinking I'd heard footsteps in the snow. At one point, around 3 a.m, I actually went out with a flashlight and scanned the tree line. Nothing. About a week later, Elise had to drive into town for supplies. Left me there alone overnight. Not my favourite thing, but I'd done it before. Around midnight, I was in the lodge kitchen making tea when I felt this strange pressure, like I was being watched. I stepped out onto the porch, and that's when I saw her, standing perfectly still behind one of the trees at the edge of the clearing. It was a woman, pale, no coat, just a long, light-coloured dress that shouldn't have been warm enough for winter. Her hair was dark, long, matted with snow. She wasn't hiding. She was just standing there, arms at her sides, head tilted slightly toward me. I didn't call out, because something about her didn't feel right. It wasn't fair exactly. It was something deeper, like my body knew before my brain did that I should not engage. She didn't approach, she didn't wave, she just stood there, barely visible in the moonlight. After about 10 seconds, I turned and went back inside, locked every door, and waited out the night in the utility room with the lights on. The next morning, I found bare footprints in the snow. No shoes, no socks, tiny indentations, like someone had walked through the clearing barefoot in sub-zero temperatures. They started at the edge of the woods and ended near the back porch, but there were no return prints. Elise came back that afternoon. I told her everything. She got real quiet. Then she told me this story from the lodge's early years, back in the 1950s, when a woman staying with her husband had gone missing during a snowstorm. They never found her, just a trail of footprints leading into the woods, bare feet. I asked why she hadn't told me that before. She said it happens every few winters. Someone catches a glimpse of a woman in the woods, usually during storms or cold snaps. But no one's ever caught her moving. She's always just standing behind a tree, watching. I finished the season, but I didn't go outside after dark again. That was 5 years ago, and I haven't been back since. But sometimes in dreams, I'm back there, standing on that dock, looking toward the tree line, and she's there again, just watching. I drive a delivery route and have done for the last 7 years. It's mostly small towns, winding roads, forests on both sides. In winter, when it gets dark early and the snow piles up, those roads can feel almost otherworldly, empty, silent. There's one stretch where I always feel a little off. It's just trees for miles, no homes, no streetlights, just a narrow 2-lane road and an old guardrail that follows a drop-off down into the woods. And for the past few months, I've been seeing someone standing beside side of that road. It started in late January. I was coming back from a drop-off around 6 p.m. Sky already dark, and I saw someone up ahead, standing on the shoulder. He wasn't waving, wasn't walking, just standing there, about 3 feet from the guardrail, facing the road. I slowed down, half expecting him to step out or flag me down, but he didn't even turn his head as I passed. Just stood there, motionless, wearing what looked like a dark hoodie and jeans. I drove another few miles before pulling over and calling it in, just in case he was hurt or lost. Police said they'd send someone to check. I didn't hear anything after that. Then, 2 nights later, he was back. Same spot, same posture. Only this time, I noticed something strange. His shadow stretched the wrong direction. The moon was behind him, which meant my shadow stretched forward, but his leaned back into the trees, as if it lit from the wrong angle. It was subtle, easy to miss, but I noticed. Again, I drove past, didn't stop. After that, I started seeing him regular. Not every night, not always in the same place, but always on the same stretch of road, between the 12-mile marker and the old bridge. Sometimes he was right at the edge of the trees, sometimes half concealed in the ditch, sometimes dead centre beneath a leaning pine, always watching the road, always still. I mentioned it to another driver who covers the overnight routes. He got real quiet, then asked, was his head tilted a little, not enough to be obvious, just a little off? That stopped me cold, because yes, it was. Like his neck wasn't quite aligned, like he was trying to appear normal, but couldn't quite get it right. It wasn't just me. Over the next few weeks, I heard similar things from 2 other drivers. One said he saw a man standing by a mile marker around 2 a.m, but when he looked back in the mirror, the guy was gone. Another said he nearly swerved off the road because someone was standing directly in the lane. Only when he looked again, there was nothing there. We started calling that stretch of the road the line. None of us liked being assigned to it. A few weeks ago, I had a late run. Snowstorm hit just before dusk, and I was the last one heading back. Visibility was awful, big flakes coming down sideways, and the road was slick. About a mile from the old bridge, my headlights caught him, in the middle of the road this time. I braked hard, tyres skidding just a little, but he didn't move, didn't even blink. I stopped the truck maybe 15 feet away. He just stood there, snow collecting on his shoulders, hands down by his sides. I rolled down the window, leaned out, and yelled, "Are you alright?" No response. I turned on the high beams, and his face wasn't right. It wasn't mutilated, wasn't gory, but the proportions were off just enough to notice. Eyes too wide apart, mouth just slightly too low. It only registered for a second, because the moment the light hit his face, he turned. Not stepped aside, not walked away. Turned completely in a single fluid motion and slipped down over the guardrail. Gone. No sound, no rustling, just gone. I drove the rest of the way in silence, didn't call it in, didn't tell anyone right away. But I did go back in the morning, in daylight, pulled over at the spot. There, just beyond the guardrail, were footprints in the snow. They led about 20 feet into the woods and stopped. No return trail, no animal tracks, just gone. A week later, we had a driver quit. He didn't give a reason, just handed his badge in and left. When we tried to call him, his number was disconnected. Another guy switched to days only, said he wasn't driving past Sutton anymore. I still take that route, I have to, and I still see him once every few weeks, always standing, always watching, and if I pass by with my windows down, sometimes I swear I hear it, a low whisper, just above the sound of the wind. I used to take the same bus home every night from my security job. It's a dull ride, 45 minutes through a small town and quiet roads. I always got off at this stop near a council estate, walked 10 minutes through the fields to get home. Never had a problem until that night. It was a Tuesday, late November, rainy, cold. I was the only one who got off at my stop, same as usual. The bus pulled away, tail lights disappearing into the fog, and I was left standing alone in the shelter, just me and the sound of the wind. There's no houses nearby, no shops, just an old wooden shelter, the kind with graffiti carved into the walls. I was zipping up my coat when I noticed something strange. There were footprints in the mud, not just one or two, dozens, all around the shelter, some deep, like someone had been pacing in place. Others were lighter, but they circled the shelter entirely, and they were barefoot. You could see the arches, the toes, full impressions in that cold, wet mud. I stood there, staring at them, confused. There hadn't been anyone else on the bus, no one waiting when I got off. I turned around slowly, and that's when I saw the figure in the field, maybe 30, 40 yards out, standing completely still. Couldn't make out much, just the outline of a person, tall and unmoving in the fog. I didn't move, didn't blink, I just stared, hoping it was a tree stump or a post, something explainable. Then it tilted, just a little, like someone leaning to look at you sideways. Not walking, not waving, just tilted. And I heard the mud squelch, as if someone had taken a slow step. I backed into the shelter, pulled out my phone. No signal, of course. I glanced back, and now the figure was closer. Not walking, just closer. Like it had shrunk the distance between us while I looked away. I didn't think, I just ran. Left the shelter, boots slapping the wet road, sprinted the whole 10 minutes back to my flat. I didn't stop to look behind me, I didn't want to know. When I finally slammed the door shut and locked it, I stood there panting, shaking. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to peek out the front window. No one was there, but on the glass, at about chest height, were 2 smears, like someone had pressed their wet hands against it. Bare palms, fingers long and spread, mud still fresh. I didn't call anyone, didn't tell anyone. Felt like no one would believe it anyway. I started cycling to work after that, didn't take the bus again, and I've never walked past that shelter since. But sometimes, when the fog rolls in, I think about the figure in the field and the footprints that started before I got there. I work nights at a small hotel near the coast. Only 20 rooms, all on one floor. We mostly get people passing through. Hikers, business travellers, couples escaping the city for a weekend. It's quiet, usually just me, the desk, and the old security monitors that flicker like it's still the 90s. The job's simple. Check guests in, answer the occasional phone call, and restock the little breakfast bar in the lobby. I actually like the peace. But there's one thing I don't like: late walk-ins. When someone comes in after midnight without a booking, it always feels off, like they're not supposed to be there. I've had a few over the years, drifters, people claiming they lost their wallet or missed their train. Most are harmless, but every now and then you get someone who doesn't feel quite right. This was last December. A storm had rolled in off the sea, wind rattling the glass, rain hitting sideways. It was past 1 AM, and I was watching the monitor feed on low volume, sipping a cold tea. All rooms were booked except for 14. It had been out of service for a few months. Leaky radiator, weird smell in the carpet we couldn't get out. No one was supposed to be in it. I remember glancing at the front camera and seeing something move near the entrance. Not a person, not at first. Just the reflection of water on glass, shifting like someone had walked past. Then came the buzzer, loud, sharp, jarring in the quiet. There he was, a man, mid-40s, soaked to the bone. He had no bag, no coat, just a button-up shirt stuck to his frame with rain. He didn't say hello, didn't offer a name, just stood there, dripping, and said, "I need a room." I started the usual spiel. "Sorry, we're full up tonight," and he cut me off. "There's one open," he said, "room 14. My heart skipped. I hadn't mentioned the number. It wasn't on the availability board behind me. And even if he'd stayed before, the booking system hadn't been working for public view since we switched software. "How do you know that?" I asked, trying to stay calm. He smiled, thin, tired, like he'd just come in from a long journey or woken up from a bad dream. "Because that's where I stayed before," he said. I hesitated. Maybe he was confused or lying, but something in the way he said it made me pause. I didn't want him to stay in that room. It was damp, cold, the radiator barely worked, and guests always complained about a weird ticking noise coming from the walls. But something told me no other room would do for him, so I gave him the key. As he walked down the hallway, I watched the camera feed. He didn't look back, didn't glance at the portraits on the wall like most guests do. Just kept walking, his footsteps silent on the carpet. He stood outside room 14, turned the handle slowly, then stepped inside and shut the door. An hour passed, then 2. At about 3:40 a.m, the phone rang. Internal line, room 14. I stared at the screen for a long second before answering. "Front desk," I said, voice low. There was a pause, no static, no background noise, then a whisper. "He's not the one who stayed here before." I froze. "Who is this?" I asked. The line clicked, dead. I checked the monitor. Room 14's light was off, no movement in the hallway. I should have just left it alone, but I needed to check. I took the master key and made my way down the corridor, heart thumping harder with each step. The hallway felt colder near the end, not just chilly, dead cold, like the air had no weight. When I reached room 14, I knocked softly. No answer. I knocked again, harder, then slowly opened the door. The room was empty, no sign of the man. The bed was still made, no towels used, no water in the sink, just an open window letting the wind howl through. And on the floor, 2 soaked footprints, side by side, facing the door. I turned to leave, but the door slammed behind me. Not from the wind, it slammed like someone had pushed it. The lights flickered, then went out completely, pitch black. I couldn't move. Then I heard it, a slow dragging sound. Not rats, not pipes, something heavy moving through the structure of the building. I used the torch on my phone, stumbled out into the hallway, and ran straight back to the desk. The rest of the night, I sat in silence, didn't call the police, didn't log the guest. By morning, room 14 was warm again, light streaming in through the window. The window I'd seen open the night before was now shut, locked from the inside. A few days later, I checked the old incident reports. Turns out, room 14 had been sealed off once before, back in the early 2000s. There'd been a death in that room. A man had checked in under a false name, paid in cash, and was found 2 days later, sprawled on the floor, soaked to the skin, even though the weather had been dry for weeks. To this day, we don't assign that room. The key is still in the drawer, no name attached. But every few months, around the same time of night, someone will walk past the front window, dripping, cold, and when the buzzer rings, I don't answer it anymore. Well, that concludes today's Scary Reddit stories. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this creepy journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please also leave your own spooky experience